Alright, welcome everyone to MTG Life. We're not going to do a deck tech video right now. I'm probably going to put one out tomorrow or the next day, depending upon if I get any time to do it. What we're going to talk about though is making decks and the different intricacies and synergies to do with making decks. We're going to focus largely on commander decks, making those, but right now we're going to go in and talk about modern and standard stuff, making that stuff. If you're doing standard, you're going to look at the current sets that are in the standard. You're going to look at what you can do. Odds are you may decide to choose based on a color scheme, blue, green, red, black, something like that, or tricolor, or monocolor. And then you're going to look at the creatures and see what kinds of abilities and combinations you can do with different ratios and how they would work out. If you're not going to do that, I don't largely do that. I mainly focus on just looking at cards that can do good abilities and then focusing on colors. I look at, let's say, Bacteria Omnikit. If you were deciding to do Embalm, you would maybe look at all the Embalm cards first and then focus on colors. Weed out what colors you don't think are worth it or are useful enough in it, and then settle with the colors that are then left. Now, if you want to go ahead and start on abilities, I prefer starting on abilities. Or, for example, black-white, my deck tech I did on black-white standard vampires. That's a tribal deck. You can focus on tribals. Like that, you're going to largely want to do pretty heavy based in that deck for creatures, for a tribal-based deck. You're going to want cards like that will affect and balance out your other creatures and to have abilities and stuff to activate. Like in that deck, Sanctum Seekers. I only run 2 of them in that deck, but they're very important in that deck. 4-drop 3/4 for, if you don't know, with whenever a vampire attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain a life. That's very important in that kind of deck. So you want to focus on stuff, because in that kind of deck, that can possibly be a win condition if you have enough of the vampires out. You don't want to focus too hard on any one thing in there, but you want to focus on the actual creature for a tribal-based deck. Now, that's all I really know about that. I don't really play standard or modern very much. I focus mainly on commander, so we're going to talk about building commander decks around your commanders and different things. Now, almost always a commander deck is going to be based around the commander's ability. It's very important because odds are you're going to build it so that you can get your commander out and the rest of your deck will start working right then and there. Now, there are upsides to that and downsides. Upsides to that is you have a pretty set thing, so that if you get your commander out, odds are you're going to immediately have the cards to do whatever you need to do with that for the synergy or combos or whatever. But here's the downside to that, is if you have a commander like that, you have to have them out to do a deck like that. That's the biggest downside to that. So most people try to balance that out by ramping out really quickly into your commanders. If you get them out, do whatever you got to do with them. I'll eventually do a Crush the Blood-Braided commander deck, but he's a super good card for this example. I'm just going to tell you what he does. He's a red, black, green, and 2 generic mana for a 3/3 legendary human warrior with whenever a creature dies, he gets +1/+1 counters equal to that creature's power. Now, in that deck, my commander deck for him is very important. He needs to be out for that deck to work. He is my win condition in that deck. I'm not going to talk much about it because I don't want to spoil it for the commander deck tech video I will eventually do for it. But suffice to say, with him as the commander, he's the kind of commander that you need to have him out to activate everything, because the rest of your deck is about killing opponent's creatures, sacking your stuff, and all that to buff him up and get him out. You can still, these kinds of decks, you can still win without having the commander, but it's a little bit more difficult, and your deck just doesn't run 100% right and not the way you want it to. Like with that, I could probably still win without him on the battlefield, or even playing him, but the deck just feels clunky because I want to do all this other stuff with my other creatures and opponent stuff, but then he's not on the battlefield, so his ability's not activating, so it feels like there's a spot that's left out there to the side. it's like an empty spot that's not being filled. So that's the downside to those kinds of decks. Now you can make decks that are not based around your commander, really. You can make decks that involve their abilities, but you don't need their abilities to win. Like if you go back and you look at my Tatyova, the Benefic Druid commander deck that I did yesterday, she's not really needed. I didn't focus on her ability as much. I didn't focus on trying to play lands as fast as possible to activate her ability. She's mainly there for an extra draw and gain a life ability, because we'll be drawing enough and getting lands to be able to play those lands. That's why she's in there. That's why she did it, and she gave me the color scheme that I was wanting with her mana cost. Largely, in that kind of deck, you can win without your commander. That deck is mainly just made for draw. Like I said in the video, it's made so that you can draw cards. You want card advantage. That's what it's about, is winning through card advantage and getting the stuff that you need right when you need it. She doesn't need to be on the field. I could probably win the deck without ever playing her. And there are and in that kind of deck, that has its own advantages and disadvantages as well. Because here's the advantage. She's a 5-drop, so if you hit all your land drops, in that kind of deck, you don't need to get her out. You don't need to worry about playing her immediately turn 5 or as fast as possible. You can decide to save her for later because she's not immediately needed for your deck. She doesn't play the most important role. She's not a needed role. You can just decide to let her sit to the side and wait till later, so that if you need a creature, you can play her out or whatever you need. She doesn't need to be played out. That's one of the upsides to that, is that it's not needed for the deck to work, because you can still play the rest of your deck because it's just draw stuff, and you have plenty of more of draw stuff, so she's not needed. The only other thing she gives you that most of the other cards don't is that 1 life for every time you drop a land. That's the only thing that she does that the other cards don't do. And that's not as important in that deck because we're not really looking to gain life. We're not looking to outlast our opponent in life. We're just looking to ramp out maybe a little bit and then to play as much of stuff as possible. In that kind of deck, that's the big advantage. The disadvantage is you have to rely largely on other stuff to happen from your deck. Because unlike the other kinds of decks where it's based exactly around your commander, you need more cards that are going to do stuff that you're going to have to draw. With the other kind of decks where it's based around your commander, you play the commander and immediately everything in your hand has absolute total use for that commander. That's the kind of thing that kind of deck does. In this kind of deck, it's based around what you can do at the moment. It's not like you're going to combo off immediately or something like that. It's not like you're going to do some combo. You could do a combo, but it's not like you're going to be able to immediately have one piece of the combo, because Tatyova is not part of that piece of the combo, like Kresh would be. Like with Kresh, you would probably set up your board and then play him and then do all this fancy stuff by sacking creatures, killing opponents' creatures, and making him to like a 20/20 right when he comes out, or the next turn after he comes out. At that point, that's like some kind of fancy combo thing, and all the cards in your hand and stuff work together. But in like a Tatyova deck, like I did, your stuff isn't going to work if you it's not going to immediately kick on, or it can have some value if you were to play your commander, but your commander is not like some big important part. So that means the stuff in your hand can't be used with something that's going to always be there. That's one of the things about the commanders, is they're always going to be there. So you can do combo stuff if you wanted to with them, but she's not really part of that in that kind of deck. So what you would do in that kind of deck is set up things so that they work together in there. Have cards that do basically the same thing, because if you're going to try to do a combo like in a kind of deck like this, you're going to need to get to those cards. And you're going to need multiples of them. But of course, it's commander, so you can only have one of each kind of card. So you look for cards that do the same abilities, that do the same things, or just about with different mana cost, power, toughness, and such like that. So that's what you do. That's one of the biggest disadvantages, is you're not going to immediately, all your stuff's going to kick on, and you're going to be able to combo or do something super awesome or do a big play immediately if you play your commander. That's one of the big downsides to that. Now, there are other ways to do make decks. You could do what some people do, a hidden commander. It's where you use a commander that can be used to your deck and use them, but it's mainly for the color scheme. And you put your commander the deck that's actually your commander inside the deck. I don't really understand it. I don't really care much about it. It's never interested me in doing that. Most people can, and it's a good thing, I guess, if you want to put in another card in there that can be used in place of your commander if you draw them and such. But whatever. What you would do in that kind of deck is you would probably set up tutor cards so you can go get that, because your opponent would be expecting you to immediately play your commander, but you're tutoring for the card that you actually want. I'm not really going to talk much more about that because I don't do it, so I can't tell you much about it, and it wouldn't be fair if I was just giving you guys guesses and such. If you guys have any kind of information or anything you guys feel like I should have added into this kind of stuff, let me know. Now, let's talk about something that I plan on eventually doing is a flavor deck. Flavor decks are decks that are just made to go with the storyline. They're made to go with the flavor text and the card names and abilities, and it's just supposed to make things a little bit more spicier. I plan on doing this when Core Set 19 comes out. If you haven't seen the spoilers, I suggest you go look at them. We have a flip Bolas Planeswalker, where he's a creature, flips into Planeswalker. I'm hoping if he's not too expensive, I'm going to get him and make him into a commander and do a Bolas flavor deck. And now what you would do in a deck like flavor-wise, like you would use cards that would go with the lore and the theme and what it's about. Like in that kind of deck, you would use other Bolas Planeswalkers in the deck. You would use a card called Slave of Bolas. You would use I can't remember some of the other names. You would use Wildfire, Hellfire, something from Hour of Devastation is the black one. You would do all these cards that involve Bolas that have him in the flavor text. Normally this stuff can work out pretty well together because it'll normally be the same color scheme and they'll normally do effects that would go with your commander. But it just adds an extra more interesting to it. It just makes it a little bit more interesting for gameplay, especially if all the decks are made to be kind of flavor-wise. It's just something interesting whenever you play your commander and then you play cards that go with the commander that are like if like Bolas was like, if there was a movie and Bolas was casting these spells, that these are his spells, that you were to make a deck where these were spells he was casting. It just makes it more interesting, makes it more flavorful. I hope that explains that a little bit better. A little hard explaining that, but I plan on doing a commander deck like that when that comes out if I can get hands on it. But yeah, you guys would just make decks based on how you want them to be. And no deck's ever the same, of course, unless you're taking one from like some list online. Then you may occasionally find someone else who is like, hey, I'm going to build this deck too. No deck is ever the same. People always have their ideas of what goes into it. So build decks the way you think they are. I, for one, some people can easily sit down and build a deck in like an hour or less. I, for one, take like 3 to 4 hours to make a deck. And that's not because I'm bad at making a deck. It's because what I do is when I decide what I want to do with the deck, decide the abilities, the color scheme, I go through my entire collection, pull out, depending upon what it's for. If it's standard, I go through my standard stuff. If it's modern, I go through modern stuff. If it's commander, I go through all my stuff. Then I go through, get out all the stuff that goes with color. Then I get out all the stuff from that new stack and pile that goes with the abilities and synergies I'm wanting to do. Then normally by then you have stuff that's a lot more than the 100 cards, which normally I go 40 lands, 60 creatures, sorceries, instant spells, and stuff like that. But what I do then is I go through and I separate them into piles. Instant, sorcery, creature, enchantment, stuff like that. And then non-basic lands. What I then do is I look at them and I decide, okay, I know what colors I'm doing, got them all here. I know what abilities and stuff I'm wanting to do and stuff that would go with it, got them all here, separated them out. and then I look at them and I'm like, and then I go through and I check with every single card, and I'm like, okay, which cards would go best with this commander or would go good with each other and stuff. Then I separate them into piles of definite stuff that I'm going to have, maybe, and possibly, and then definitely not. Normally by then you still have more than what you would put into the deck, so the definites are set to the side. Then I see how much more I'm going to want to put in, and I go into the maybe pile. And I look at those, and I decide which ones I want. Now, if that doesn't fill out the rest of the cards for the slots, I then go over to the possibly pile and fill out the rest. I do not put them up then, I leave them out, because then I play test the deck many times. I don't play test a deck once. I don't play test it twice. I play test a deck 10 times, 20 times. I play test it a lot to make sure that the deck synergies will work, to make sure that I get through and I make sure every single card can work the way I want it to in all these different situations. That's how I make decks. Now, there are people who can do this stuff in an hour. They immediately know what they want to do. And to those who do that, congratulations. I wish I could do that, but I try to make my stuff a lot more for sure. And yeah, my decks aren't the best stuff. You guys have seen my deck techs if you're watching this. They're nowhere near the most fanciest, most best decks there are. They're probably not going to go to any kind of tournament and win. They're not going to go competitive, but they are fun and casual and just really good to play. And they work well together. And it just makes a fun time, because that's the only reason why I make these decks, is to have fun. I don't make them to win tournaments. Now, I would like to go to do some tournaments, but I don't get to do that stuff that much, because I live like an hour and a half away from any place close enough to actually go do that kind of thing. But yeah, that's how I make my decks. I sit there and I go through, and then I decide what I don't like. And the way I make decks, I never make sideboards. Some people are screaming at me, you don't make sideboards? What in the world is wrong with you? How are you going to deal with this threat? I don't make sideboards because I try to make my decks so that they can deal with any threat immediately. And like I said, I mainly do commander, so there's no sideboard really in there. There's some weird sideboard rule that if it's okay with the rest of the people, there can be, but I don't do that. But my standard black-white vampire deck, there's no sideboard for it. I make it so that it can deal with possibilities immediately. I don't do stuff like that. And like I said, I play casually. I don't play competitive. If I played competitive, I would probably make a sideboard, but I don't do competitive. So, this is just my take on this stuff. Hope you guys found this interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you made it to the end, click the like button, subscribe, comment, say something. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I did too. I should be getting a better setup soon, and I'll be setting it up so that you guys will be able to actually read the cards and see the cards that I'm talking about, and the quality will be much better. I got some tips from Bad Boy MTG, Bad Boy Gaming, Mr. Joey Moss. If you ever see this video, thank you very much for for your advice. It was very helpful, very good. And I really thank you a whole lot. It's really going to help me out with this. Feel free to go watch his videos. He does a lot of good stuff. He's a really nice guy, people. Thank you, Mr. Moss, if you ever see this. It means a lot. And thank you guys for watching this. And I hope you guys enjoy. And I hope you guys as viewers can also give me tips and advice on what you guys think I should do and what I'm doing wrong and what you guys think I should do better, and what I can do to make these better and more interesting. Because I want you guys to have as much fun and enjoy this as much as I do. Because I enjoy talking about this as much. It may not seem like it, but I really do enjoy talking about this. This here, Magic, is like one of the most important things in my life. It's one of the most fun things I do. It's the only hobby I actually have, and it's something that I actually know a little bit about, that I can actually claim to have some decent knowledge to help people out on it. And I hope this helps you guys out with anything. Any questions, comment, let me know. Thanks for watching.